Welcome to the Saturday Cadence podcast. I'm Blake Biscardi, and remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football. It all builds to this. Rivalry week is here. Ohio State and Michigan battle in the game. Texas and Texas A&M renew after more than a decade. The Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn, and Florida's chance to be bowl eligible against Florida State. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, as we bring all things Rivalry Week to you. My name is Blake Biscardi, and I've got Grant Kincaid with me. We are proudly presented by the Silver Bulletin. So, Grant, it's hard to believe it's the end of November, but as we say all the time, we've seen the contenders emerge throughout this month, so it'll be another exciting weekend of college football.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, the rivalries that'll be going on, it's always fun to see what happens. These lines, these lines essentially mean nothing this week. Maybe in a couple of games, you're like, well, there's just no way. But a lot of these games, you just don't know what's going to happen. And I think there's a little more, just enough parity in college football right now that it makes it that way right now.
It absolutely does. It's felt like 2007 all year. And so, like you're saying, throw the records out the window, throw the point spreads out the window. This is who wants it more, who's going to will themselves to victory, and how have you prepared? Because you're going to lay it all on the field here on Saturday beginning at noon. So let's just remind people, Grant, about some of the notable Week 13 games from last week. We had Ohio State dominate Indiana, second top 5 win of the weekend. Then we saw Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M all get upset, which really flipped the college football playoff picture upside down, and that's what I want to parlay into. So Ohio State is locked into the playoff now at this point. I also think that Indiana is, but on the note of this SEC thing now, we were thinking they could get 5. I think they're getting 3, potentially 4. How do you see this playoff bracket shaping up now, knowing those 3 SEC teams went down?
I agree. I still think you're going to see 3, possibly 4 SEC teams. I think the committee has shown that they very much value, the 2 big conferences, rightfully so. These are the 2 conferences that have amassed the most talent in college football. And I think, where a lot of these teams are sitting in that, that 10 to 15 range, maybe a little bit outside, the dominoes are going to fall where the committee is just going to end up putting in the teams that they had ranked around there, which is the SEC teams. So I agree.
Yeah, Grant, I think on that note too, talking about those SEC teams and seeing what the bubble looks like of this playoff bracket. Texas A&M obviously gets its shot to reinsert itself into the SEC championship game picture. That is the only path for the Aggies. Should they beat Texas, then they would have to beat Georgia in Atlanta to get to the playoff. But I think that bubble pretty much looks like Alabama, South Carolina, and Clemson sitting there on the bubble. The Gamecocks and Tigers playing on Saturday in a rivalry game. And then Alabama got knocked away by Oklahoma. But Alabama's resume is something the committee has valued all year long. They have big wins over Georgia and LSU. Do you think there's still a shot for Alabama? And I know this sounds crazy because 2 of these teams have 3 losses and 2 of these teams are in the SEC. Plus, there's a head-to-head that you need to factor into this with Alabama over South Carolina. But I actually think that Alabama is still alive in this college football playoff race. I think that they need help, but I do think that they are a team that the committee will consider for that potentially 12th spot, which could then make the 5 seed a little bit more tricky, maybe not as inviting as we once thought.
Yeah, I think you're right. Obviously, they have to have a little bit of help, to kind of get in that position. But I think, with a 12-team playoff, Ohio State or not Ohio, Alabama basically has to play themselves out of it. The committee is always going to have Alabama, in the back of their mind at the very least, to make the playoff. It's just how it's going to be. Especially knowing the talent on that team and knowing that on any given night they can beat a lot of the teams in the playoff and have proven that. Um, I think there's definitely a path for Alabama, and I think there will always be a path for Alabama unless they lose, 4 games.
Yeah, I'm curious of how the committee evaluates them moving forward. Only one more time to impress them with the game on Saturday against Auburn. How do they stack up against some of these other teams like an SMU, a Boise State, maybe Tulane starts jumping up there, the winner of Clemson, South Carolina. Lots of things still in play here toward the bottom of that bracket. I do think the top of it is set. And on that note, I think Indiana is in, and I did think that there was a world that if Texas lost, that they would not get in the playoff if they lose to Texas A&M, and there was a two-loss SEC team battle. I think Texas is also locked into this thing now, given those results that we saw last weekend. Um, One other thing, though, quick, Forever Game Day is a new partner on the show. They believe in what we're doing around here. And as a return, we've got you guys a discount code. So use code SILVER for 15% off your first order at forevergameday.com to get your favorite team's humor based apparel today. Well, Grant, we're talking about rivalry week, and there is none bigger than Ohio State, Michigan. It is the game. This will be the 120th edition that these two teams meet. This began as a football game, and it's often likened to war. And people think that that is hyperbole. It is not. They actually, the two states fought a war over Toledo, and that has translated to the football field. Records gone. It does not matter anything that you've done before this game. All that matters is the 3.5 hours on Saturday when you are sitting across on the opposite sideline. We've seen Michigan win 3 straight games in this rivalry. Ohio State is a big favorite this year. Grant, when we look at the billing of this game, what it's brought us, nothing compares to it in all of sports. What are your thoughts on this Ohio State Michigan game this year? What it means to the program? You can see the way that Ohio State is going about their business this year. There's a different edge to this team. There's a different edge to Ryan Day. Will Howard, a transfer. This is his first time being immersed in the Ohio State Michigan rivalry. He grew up in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, so he's not foreign to it. He grew up in Big Ten country, so at least he understands it. But you see all these players that came back. It was for this game, and we've seen them all say that this week. They immediately turned the page after beating Indiana, which is a top 5 win. That didn't even matter. They said, give us the team up north. So give me your
Yeah,
thoughts there.
yeah. I mean, I think it's always there's always going to be a different feeling on Saturday when Michigan is the opponent. And obviously, right now, Ohio State is 21 point, you know, favorites at home. So there's maybe a little less hype around it because of that and the way Michigan's kind of fumbled through the year. But like you said, a lot of the players came back for this. And the way that Ryan Day has operated the past 365 days, it's been a different team, it's been a different coach, a different program. And I think it was engineered to just roll through this game no matter what happens. And obviously to win a national championship at the end of the day. But there's going to be some kind of fireworks in this game. And I would guess it's going to be from the Ohio State side, from some guys that have been through years and years of turmoil that has also been wrapped in some controversy. So there's going to be a lot of emotion on Saturday.
Yeah, and don't let this big point spread fool you. I mean, it has not mattered in the past. It may not matter. Or you know what? Ohio State may win by more than the point spread. You just don't know how this game is going to go until you step onto the field and actually get into it. And Grant, you're mentioning about all of these players that have undergone some turmoil in Columbus. Well, on the other sideline, Michigan has a handful of guys that have been through this game and they don't know what it's like to lose to Ohio State. The Buckeyes have not won a game in this rivalry since 2019. Would have likely won in 2020, but that game did not happen because of COVID. Michigan's 1-21, 2-3. So, how do the Buckeyes take the edge back from Michigan? How do they turn the tide back in their favor? This rivalry has largely favored Ohio State in this century. What does Ohio State have to do to right the ship, per se, in this game on Saturday and not play overly emotional, but more with a focused energy and motivation?
Well, they're going to be overly emotional. And I think if they weren't, then they don't have a pulse. And, especially like I said, all the things we've said leading up to this game and the players coming back and just Ryan Day, nothing more needs to be said about that whole situation with Michigan. But um, you know, to right the ship, I think it's the one thing that they haven't been able to do. It's run the ball, especially early against Michigan, in a way that that gives them control of the game. And when they take the big shots, they capitalize. And we've seen the way that this Ohio State offense can strike at any moment. The talent is unbelievable. So I think Ohio State has this team finally primed to be able to handle this team and possibly cover that spread. But who knows?
That's one of the things I want to highlight, Grant, is Ohio State has struggled to run the football in this game consistently over the last couple of years. Now, whichever team this century has won the rushing battle wins the game. And you might look at this and say, well, Ohio State can beat you through the air or on the ground. Michigan can probably only beat you on the ground. They don't really have that much of a passing attack, so they'd have to find it. But looking at the rushing battle and how this is going to shape up for Ohio State, we know Michigan has to run the football to win the game. Ohio State does not have to, but historically speaking, they do. And you're down two star linemen, Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin. Will Kazmarek has been back. Probably wasn't fully 100% against Indiana, but will be available and play on Saturday. Are you concerned at all on the offensive line for Ohio State? Because this Michigan front four is probably the most talented they've played since Oregon. Penn State's is really good with Abdul Carter, but when you've got all these guys like Mason Graham up front, it's a different beast. And last year, what burned Ohio State was that interior pressure. That was actually how part of how they lost the game on that final drive. Donovan Jackson gets put on his backside. Kyle McCord to step into a throw early and throws an interception to Marvin Harrison Jr. So
Yeah,
that has to be Michigan's game plan is to get that interior pressure. How do you think Ohio State handles that?
yeah, I think it is. It's the one thing in the back of probably most Ohio State's heads is, they do have that defensive line and we do have a shuffled around offensive line. So I think that's the one matchup people are going to be looking at, especially, as the game goes on, how do guys do as they wear down? How do we run the ball late in the game as well because of that? But I think, like I said, this team has kind of been engineered to be able to run the ball in so many different ways and neutralize pass rush in a lot of ways. On top of the fact that Will Howard is, definitely a lot more athletic of a quarterback than McCord at that position. And I think we've seen a lot of that throughout the year. Some of the plays he makes, even if the throws can be a little awry, what he can do with his feet is an X factor above anything else. So I think Ohio State will be able to handle it, but that's going to be the one place that Michigan will exploit.
Ohio State's built to run the football, throw the football, and then also stop the run. Now, stopping the pass has been something that has been shaky for the Buckeyes. However, Jim Knowles has re-engineered and retooled this defense since that Oregon game. It's looked much better, held Indiana in check all afternoon. I know the weather was a little bit shaky in the first half, but Rourke only threw for 68 yards. So I think when you look at this game matchup wise and stylistically, what that approach is for Ohio State is you're going to have to run the football, but I think starting fast. Grant, Ohio State does not start fast in big games. For what reason? I don't know. It's just how it usually goes. And I think if you can start fast and score a quick touchdown to maybe 10 points, whatever it is, and then put pressure on Michigan to throw the football, where it's that they're too far behind to run the ball consistently because they have to now chip into that lead. How can you do that? You move the football faster throwing the ball. So I think that's got to be in Ohio State's minds of when they're looking at this Michigan defense and how they can offset that really, really talented defensive line is you're going to have to scheme some runs. Going to see if you have success. You've had it all year. We'll see what Carson Hinsman, Tegra Shabola, I think that right side of the offensive line, all the attention has been on the left side with the injuries, but the right side, that was shaky to begin with in the run game before the injuries. So that's something that I want to look at when I see Ohio State in this game plan is do they just run to the left side or what scheme Chip Kelly does because this is his first time in the rivalry game. But let's move into Texas A&M. That'll be the next big matchup of the weekend. Now, lots of big games, college football playoff implications everywhere. Quarterback health, I think, is paramount in this game. Quinn Ewers undergoing an MRI this week. And then we also saw Marcel Reed get banged up against Auburn. That game went to 4 overtimes. I have been one to say I like A&M in this game. I've liked them since the summer. They have only made me like them more as the season's gone on. But I saw the physical wear and tear that has gone on with Texas A&M over the last couple of weeks. I'm not so sure how confident I am in Marcel Reed being healthy because I think he is the path at quarterback to beat Texas, not Connor Wegman. How do you think that quarterback battle plays into this game?
Yeah, it's definitely a storyline, especially because those two guys could not be more different style wise. Marcel Reed, we saw what he did against LSU. I mean, he is a freak athlete when he's able to run and get in the open field. But Wegman does have the arm talent that can stretch the field. And I mean, we've seen it so many times in past teams having to deal with this, where they have a guy who's so far leaning athletically, and then another guy that's so far leaning arm talent wise, and they just can't stick with a guy. But I think Wyman's probably your safest pick at this point, just because of that. But like you said, this team is so banged up, and it's been in a lot of long physical games, a lot of close games, and I think, like you said, it's given the edge to Texas, kind of.
I think so too. This game is trending more toward the Longhorns' favor, getting that rematch with Georgia. So, should that happen, I think that would be one of the highest build conference championship games in recent memory there. But this is the first time, Grant, these two teams are playing in over a decade. Kyle Field is going to be absolutely raucous and electric. I think that it will give some points to Texas A&M. Now, I know you say that of how can a crowd give you points. It's just worth it. Maybe there's a miscue or a mistake. Things are going to happen. We saw it last week. Kurt Signetti for Indiana said, we thought we'd be prepared and be able to handle this environment in Ohio Stadium. And that was not the case. They had to go to the silent count. There was a couple of miscues. Um, we saw some pre-snap penalties. Does that happen with Texas? This is a veteran offense. So Quinn Ewers has played in hostile environments before, but this Texas A&M fan base, this team, they're going to be hungry for this game. They do not like Texas. They didn't want Texas coming to the SEC. So they're going to lay this all out there with an SEC championship berth on the line. What team, Grant, has more riding on this game? Is it Texas because of all the preseason expectations and where they should go with that roster talent? Or is it on Mike Elko and Texas A&M at home, especially after losing to Auburn last week, where Elko in his press conference slipped up and said, our focus is solely on Texas. I mean, Auburn.
Uh,
And that
yeah,
was a quote of his. And you're like, all
yeah,
right, we knew it was a look ahead spot. And you just confirmed that you guys are, in fact, looking ahead.
yeah.
And they got beat. So where's the pressure lie in this matchup?
I think it is closer than most people would think, because I think a lot of people would be like, well, Texas has everything on the line as far as they have a title run and the SEC championship right in front of them. And for Texas, that is, obviously something even bigger, because Texas for so many years has been mocked for Texas is back, and are they back? Oh, they made the playoff last year, but are they for real this year? So I think at the end of the day, Texas still has the most pressure, and Sark, kind of at the end of the day. But like you said, Elko put himself in the position where, well, man, you better put up against Texas, and you better put up a fight. And if he doesn't, then there could be some murmurings. But it's his first year, and he did what he could. I think he's earned at least another year or two.
Oh, yeah. I'm not concerned about Mike Elko getting fired or anything of that nature. I
No, no,
just
no,
thought
no. Yeah,
he just kind of played himself into this corner where they have to perform well. And maybe Texas beats them, but they don't beat themselves and they don't turn the football over and things of that nature. But Grant, do you think, since there's an SEC championship berth online, and this is where we're all waiting to see how the committee handles this, does the winner automatically go to the college football playoff? And the reason I say that is because if you make a conference championship game, should you be penalized for losing the extra game? And this is more so for Texas A&M. I think Texas, regardless, is going to the playoff. Georgia's for sure going to the playoff. But if Texas A&M manages to beat Texas and then get to the SEC championship game, they would not be ranked likely in the top 10, but I could see the committee maybe moving them up to around 12 to be on that bubble. Does Texas A&M get penalized if they go to the SEC championship game and lose, if the committee somehow has them in the top 12 next week when the polls come out, if they get some help?
Well, I think A&M is in a bit of a Indiana situation, whereas, we weren't going to necessarily punish Indiana for losing to Ohio State, but we were if it was, you know, really bad. Um, so I think it's kind of in that gray area where, yeah, you don't punish the extra game, the fact that they got the opportunity to play in the game. But if they get waxed and it's, and it's they sustain a loss that, probably puts them out of, a third or fourth loss that puts them out of the race, then you have to, I think, at that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that I actually, you know what? I think that Texas A&M has to win the SEC to get to the playoff. I don't think
Yeah,
that
most likely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see the committee jumping them enough spots, whether it be six, seven, eight, or even nine
They'd
spots
have to
to get
lose
in
on
there
like a
with a
game
win.
winning field goal, just like insanity, and look really good. Yeah.
And they would need a lot of chaos to happen this week too. They would need a lot of things to happen to get there without winning the SEC. Um, but I do have Texas on upset alert. I also have Arizona State on upset alert. So let's transition this into our Saturday 7 picks. Grant, lots on the docket this week. We're going to start in the SEC with Tennessee. They are 10.5 point favorites on the road against Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. They have already claimed victim to beating Alabama. They have also kept it very close with Texas. Is this a game that matches up well for Vanderbilt, or do you think Tennessee is able to roll on this one?
I think Vandy has proved all year that they're a team, especially at home, that can exceed expectations. That being said, I think Tennessee's going to win the game, but I do think Vandy is going to cover uh, at the moment the 10.5.
Yeah, I don't expect to see many covers this week when these bigger point spread games. I think there will be
Yeah,
some,
yeah.
but this is another one where I think there's a lot of wear and tear on your team here. I'm going to take Vanderbilt to cover. I do like Tennessee to win the football game. I also think that they are locked into the college football playoff, and they will be one of the teams you do not want to play, especially in a first round game. But let's stay on the East Coast here. South Carolina at Clemson. The Tigers are favored by 2.5 in this matchup. South Carolina's been one of the hottest teams in the country. Clemson was trending up for a while, and they have just fallen off a cliff in the last couple of weeks. Is this a redemption game for them? Because they can play themselves right into the college football playoff picture yet again.
Well, I think Vegas has this right. It really is a coin flip, especially to me. Um, I think South Carolina is a little underrated this year. And I think, like you said, Clemson's been underwhelming. So I think coming into this, it's like, man, a huge rivalry. It is at Clemson. You got to give Death Valley some credit there. But at the end of the day, I think South Carolina is probably the better, more complete team, and I think they're going to win.
Yeah, I have more confidence in South Carolina as well. I think that place will be on fire. And I also think that I wouldn't be surprised with whichever team wins this game. I mean, Dabo with a shot to
Yeah,
go to an ACC championship game in the playoff. I do think that team will be ready. I think this is going to be a really, really good football game. I'm going to
yeah.
take South Carolina actually on the road in the upset and to sit on the edge of that college football playoff bubble. So give me the Gamecocks. Going out west here, Notre Dame 7.5 point favorites at USC. This could be a potential trap game for Notre Dame here. And the reason I say that is because we were all building up this matchup against Army. They handled business easily. But going on the road to USC, they're playing better defense. They have a new quarterback now. Miller Moss has been benched. USC is trending in the right direction. Their record really doesn't say anything all that impressive, but 7.5 is a pretty tight spread in this game if you're just looking at record and how these two teams have been playing. So this almost feels like a somebody knows something type of line.
Yeah, I've been really confident in USC being able to at least cover this. And the more I think about it, I think I'm just going to go with USC to win outright. Um, I think Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has kind of, they have since NIU, they have shown that they can win a lot of games and they can win. They've won every game since then, and they've taken care of business when they've had to. But I just think this with the schedule they've played, and you know, in some games I have with the eye test, I don't know if they can handle only losing one game on their schedule. I don't know if that's possible. I think USC is going to clip them.
I think this game's going to be super interesting, especially early. I just have a weird feeling that Notre Dame finds a way to pull away late. I think this will be a late cover for the Irish, and they're going to get a road victory and cement a college football playoff spot and a first round home game. We'll go to the Iron Bowl next, Grant. Auburn on the road at Alabama. The spread is 11.5 in favor of the Tide. I mean, it was an abysmal offensive performance in Norman by Alabama. Jalen Milroe, 7 rushing yards. I mean, it was just bad, 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 no matter how you looked at this game. Is this a rebound game for Alabama as they look to potentially sneak in backdoor to the playoff? Or does Auburn keep this close and have some more magic left in its season?
I think Alabama covers this. I think that team is in panic mode. And I think at home against a sputtering Auburn team this year, you never know what you're going to get with that team, much like you never know what you're going to get with Hugh Freeze. I think Alabama, like I said, it's panic mode, and they're going to come out and cover that.
Yeah, they're in wounded animal mode for sure. And I think Auburn's going to turn the football over a couple times in this matchup, and Alabama's just going to play on fire. Now, this will be a back and forth game early, but Alabama will be too much for Auburn to handle. So give me the Tide to cover. Out west, Arizona State. Grant, this is for a shot to the Big 12 championship game, potentially the college football playoff. They are favored by 9.5 on the road against Noah Fafita in Arizona. Do the Wildcats pull the upset here, or do the Sun Devils, Kenny Dillingham, do they continue this magical run of a season that they're having?
Yeah, like you said, Fafita and McMillan, them coming back, you would have thought that Arizona would be the one with a -9.5 line, but it's Arizona State on the road -9.5, and I think that says something. I'm definitely going to pick Arizona State to win, but I do think Arizona is going to cover that.
Yeah, I look at this game and I think of last week with Arizona State BYU. I think there's going to be a little bit of a hangover from that game. And I know this is a rivalry game. I know Arizona State knows what's at stake. I just think 9.5 is too much, especially on the road after an
Yeah.
emotional win like that. So I'm going to take Arizona to cover Arizona State to win. Next, we'll go to College Station. This is going to be one of the games of the week here. Texas favored by 6 on the road at Texas A&M. Grant, we previewed this game earlier. What's the outcome?
If the line stays at 6, I would have Texas covering. If it jumps anywhere over a touchdown, I would be a little more weary to take it. But I will take Texas to cover right now.
Yeah, I've been, like I said before, I had A&M. This is one of my preseason upset picks and kind of those game of the years that we talk about. And I'm leaning more toward Texas. So I do think Texas wins the game, but I will take A&M to cover, kind of hedge myself a little bit here. I just think at home, that crowd noise, the energy that's going to be in that building, I think it's going to rattle Texas a little bit. We've seen Texas get rattled
Yeah.
before in big games. Does Quinn Ewers protect the football? Is he healthy? Does Arch Manning protect the football if he has to play? All of those things. I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to take the Aggies to cover that 6 here, and then we'll go from there. But Grant, let's go to the final game here. The game, Michigan at Ohio State. The Buckeyes are favored by 21. Let's take a minute or two here. Give me your keys to the game and then a score prediction, who wins and why.
Yeah, so I think keys to the game, kind of like we said earlier, Ohio State, definitely needs to be able to run the ball, and that's been the Achilles heel for them in this game in the past, especially in the second half, being able to finish games out. You want to see that from Ohio State, but at the end of the day, the big plays, the passing, Ohio State's gonna, make their money that way, and I think that's how Ohio State's gonna kind of pull away from Michigan. Yes, Michigan has that defensive line, and I think that's kind of their X factor. That's the matchup that they're going to try and exploit the most. I would think that Ohio State has some things up their sleeves like screens, quick passes, kind of offset that pressure. And I think just the talent at the end of the day, Ohio State is rolling, and I like Ohio State right now to cover 21.
Yeah, this is not just a game. This is a way of life. And, I see how these two teams match up. I have a ton of respect for that Michigan defensive front. And I do think that they'll give Ohio State some issues. I don't think that it will be this easy thing that all these Buckeye fans think is going to happen. I mean, both teams will earn anything that they get um,
Yeah,
on Saturday.
yeah. I think it'll be more one of those games where it ends up being 21, but it was within, 7 or 10 on, a lot of the game, and Ohio State kind of, ideally pulls away at the end with the run game. That's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, similar to those matchups in 21 and 22, maybe just the opposite direction. I think, Grant, we've not seen Ohio State throw the football vertically down the field in a while. They maybe a shot or two is all that we've seen. I think we see a lot of that on Saturday. I think Ohio State takes a shot,
Oh yeah.
especially early. I
Oh
think they're
yeah.
either going to send Jeremiah Smith, something's going to happen. They've got something up their sleeve where you're going to see a big play in the Ohio State passing game. And I think that's going to get the shoe rocking even more than it already is. I was there last week, and I mean, that place was on absolute fire. And I think we're going to even see something more than that from the fans. No one even sat down last week. I don't expect anyone to even sit down. They may sleep standing up in Columbus going into Saturday. So I think Ohio State takes some shots down the field. I think they're going to find a way to run the football. But I think, Grant, the defense has what's been harped on the most. That's where a lot of those veterans are that came back to win this game. I think when this game is over, Will Howard's going to play. He's going to have a great game. Travion Henderson. I think they're all going to have good games on offense, but we're really going to be looking at the defense and say the Silver Bullets answered the bell, and that was a strong performance by them. Jim Knowles is going to right the ship for what's happened over the last couple of seasons. Ohio State they didn't really blitz much to start the year. They were one of the least blitzing teams in the country. Now they're blitzing at about 46% of the time, which is about fourth in the country. I like Ohio State to bring pressure on Davis Warren. They're going to play with a box that has about 7, potentially 8 corners will be out on an island. I will take the Buckeyes in this game. I think that they win, and I think that they cover. Cannot wait to be there in person and see this matchup for the 120th time. Grant, as we close the show, any final thoughts here before we head into the Thanksgiving holiday? The show will be brought to you a day early because of that. We have more of a condensed week. So, any closing thoughts here heading into the holiday weekend and Rivalry week?
Well, obviously, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Enjoy your family, enjoy the day, enjoy the football. But the football that we really need to enjoy is on Saturday, and we have in the endless rivalries, and you can't complain about that. It is the end of the year, the end of a wild year in college football, and we're set for a wild weekend. So I'm ready to take it all in.
Oh, me too. And everybody, again, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with your families. If you're traveling, please be safe. We are looking forward to bringing you all this coverage throughout the weekend. We'll have a lot of Ohio State, Michigan coverage from the site. I will be there live. So I want to thank you for listening to today's episode. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave us a review. It really helps out our show. And check us out on social media at Saturday Cadence for more content throughout the week. And remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football. For Grant Kincaid, I am Blake Biscardi. We will see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and God bless.